Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Talking with Coach Troy, where I talk to really interesting people about things that they do and things that they like. And a lot of times it's going to be connected to endurance sports. Wonder why. Today with me, my guest is Julie Stark, and she's with On Your Left Fitness and Timing here in Tucson, Arizona. So if you would ever do an event here in Tucson, more likely or not, you're going to somehow run into Julie and her company. Julie, it's great to have you here.
Thank you, Troy. It's my pleasure.
Yeah. So we met many years ago, probably like 9 or 10 years ago. I remember there was an event you were holding way out in Pinal County off of I-10. I forget exactly where it was, but was that one of your first events? Is that when you first got in business?
Yeah, um, we started doing triathlon in 2008, my husband and I, after our son had stopped racing professional motocross. And we were like, well, what do we do with ourselves now? And so we joined a tri club, and the tri club at the time had talked about wanting to put on a race, but they didn't want to be responsible. So my husband and I said, yeah, we'll do it. So we put on a race out at Pinal Air Park Road, which at the time was called Evergreen Maintenance Center. And you, I think, came in the second year, so you didn't get to have to deal with the hiccups of the first year. But our first race had 20 people.
Oh my gosh. That's great. But then that second year, if I remember, there was a lot more people there. So you were able to market it and get the word out there.
Yes. So we came back the next year, and we had over 100 people. So our first year we had 20. And then the next year we had 100. And I believe that's the one that you attended. And we stayed there for about one more year, I want to say. And we outgrew the venue. I don't know. I don't know if you remember much about it, but it was a funky pool that was only 33 and 1/3 yard long. And no lane lines, literally
Yeah.
splitting the lanes or on the bottom of the pool. So, I mean, we were just really just going anywhere we could to build stuff to put on this race. And we had huge support. The Pinal Air Park also hosts the WATS, the Western Aviation Army Training Site, which later on, after my husband left Evergreen Maintenance Center, he worked there, which is why we got to use the facility.
Okay.
The WATS, their EMTs supported the race for us, and they got their commander to even do it, and he didn't know how to swim.
Oh,
Scared me. I was just like, please don't drown on my watch. Please don't drown on my watch.
yeah,
And
that's not good
he
for business.
survived and he made it through. But we outgrew that venue, and it took me 2 years working with the town of Oro Valley to move it from Pinal Air Park to the town of Oro Valley, which is where it is now. This would have been the 6th year, and we were oversold this year.
Well, tell us about the trajectory or progression of your company in building, because you started off small, had 20 people, and now you do events all over the state, essentially, if I'm not mistaken, maybe even beyond the state. And timing wise, race management, tell us about that evolution.
Okay, so I formally opened up On Your Left Fitness in, I think, 2010. And
And
at the
what does that mean,
time,
by the way? What does on your left mean, by the way? I'm just
so that was actually a training buddy of mine, a marathon training buddy of mine, and he was getting into cycling, and he was constantly hearing from riders going by him, on your left, on your left. So it was actually his idea to name our business On Your Left
I
Fitness.
like that. Yeah. First year the ding. First year the ding. Ding, ding, ding on your left.
And then my husband also, Mark, he's a big cyclist. I'm a runner. That is my true passion. I enjoy running, and I will do it no matter what, rain or shine. The biking and the swimming, I'm real easy to come up with excuses of why I don't need to get on the bike or I need to go to the pool. But I will run no matter what. So anyway, so we formed On Your Left Fitness, and we started putting on these little mini tries, and it kind of just grew from there. At the time, there was the Tucson triathlon that was going on, and they were holding 3 events a year. And it just fortuitous for us at the time that we, like, I think with our second year at Oro Valley, the streetcar shut down, the longest running tri in Tucson. It had been going for like 30 years. So we became that replacement because, they couldn't do it anymore, and people still needed a place to compete. And so that's, I think, what really stimulated our growth for triathlon. Also, because I'm a runner, I wanted to put on some fun runs, and timing is expensive. The equipment is expensive, so the people that charge for that, they're not cheap. Well, to be able to put on a little 100-person race, there was no way I was going to afford that. So I told Mark, I'd really like you to buy me one piece of equipment. I'd like to learn how to time a race. And he's like, okay, if it's going to make you happy. So we put on these, we called them test and tunes. And it was just local people. You pay $10. We served you pancakes at the finish line. There were no awards or anything like that. It's meant to be fun. You came out in the beginning, in the spring, on the course, and you ran your race, saw what your time was. You come back in the summer after you've done some training. How is my fitness doing? And then we came back in the fall and had a big party. And did I improve? Did I meet my goals for the end of the year? People loved it. So it went from there. And once people knew we had a timing box, that's when we started hearing from people, would you time our race? Would you time our race? And I really wasn't in the market to time other people's races because I just had the one box, and it takes more than that. And it wasn't until, I want to say 2012 maybe, or 13, I was putting on the Oro Valley Tri, and I had a major hiccup with a timing company. And I was not able to produce results because the timing company had made a mistake. And it really impacted me emotionally. I mean, I literally was crying. People were giving me hugs because I feel like ultimately it's my responsibility as a race director. I'm there to provide a service to people, and I couldn't provide the end result. And I ended up having to mail people's awards weeks later after the race, after the timer figured out what happened. So I just looked at Mark and said, that's it. You have to buy me all the equipment. I'm timing all my own races from now on. And oh, by the way, I'll make money doing this too. So he bought into it, and we bought, all the equipment. I own several different types of systems. I can time a triathlon. I can time a running event. I can time cycling races. I use the same equipment that's used at the Tour de France for timing high-speed cycling events. And we time races in Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, you name it, we go there. So it was a nice change for me. I had retired from being a paralegal for 20 years. Okay. And so this is my full-time job now, and it's honestly the dream job.
That's awesome. Well, I wanted to ask you about that because I know you and I have talked a little bit about the current status of endurance sports during the pandemic, and where are we headed with that? What's your opinion? What are you hearing from other race directors out there?
That's a good question. It's a little bit, I want to say, improving at this point. And the only reason I say that is because an actual race, not a virtual race. I mean, there is just a myriad of virtual races going on right now, because people can't go to venues and come from out of town or out of state and race. So a race in Indiana, a small race put on with just 250 people and a time trials type start, no more than 10 people. And I feel like that gave us a little bit of hope. Because honestly, when COVID hit here, I mean, in Arizona, I'm talking not necessarily New York, but in Arizona, when it was coming down, it was not until really March that we were hearing, the beginning of March, this is, this might not happen. And I was like 2 weeks away from putting on the 6th annual Oro Valley Tri. And so it pretty much decimated the entire athletic scene here in Tucson, all the running events, triathlons. But I'm starting to see hope because people are thinking outside the box. We are a social community. Athletes, yes, we train on our own, but we look forward to going to those events and seeing people and connecting and how you been and where you've been racing and what are you doing? Oh, you got new gear. Where'd you get that? Do you like it? Would you recommend it? Right. And I know this for a fact because from a timing standpoint, I was trying to expedite at one of my tries, and I was going to offer to sell people their individual chip so they wouldn't have to come early or stand in line to get a chip at any of my races or any race that I timed. And I was told no. They didn't want to buy a chip because standing in line was how they caught up with everybody.
Oh, interesting. Right.
They liked the networking side of it. So I can tell a lot of people in this community are really chomping at the bit to get back to that scene, not necessarily from a competitive standpoint, because it's been my experience when I talk to people, they're not really training. They're not going out and doing a lot of speed work. They're doing a lot of base work. But they want to be at a race. They miss that community, right, that feeling. And we are a community, a big community.
Yeah, that's great. So you're seeing a little bit of a shift right now. People are thinking, like race directors, I guess, are thinking of ways to mitigate risk around the virus and build confidence in the racers. So when they come back, so social distancing.
Yes.
Like I mentioned, waves of 10. I think that's really interesting. So what else? Any other ideas that you've heard about?
The only other thing I've just, that's really about it. How do we assign time slots and make sure that, no more than 10 people are showing up? What kind of break do we need in between all those? How many people can we start at a time? And what's interesting to me, and I don't want to start a huge political debate, but, they're allowing restaurants and now some, movie theaters, they can open back up with limited capacity. So, okay, a movie theater can probably hold, a couple hundred people. So let's just say every other chair, that's 100 people. How come they can have in a closed environment, 100 people, but a race event, they keep selling us no more than 10, no more than 10. When we're going to be so spread out and so far away from each other. So I'm really working with some local race directors here to try and persuade some of the officials locally to let us at least like one race in July. Give us a try. We'll show you how it can be done, and then maybe we can move forward from there.
Yeah. Interesting. Smart. So what about you personally? Are you training for anything in particular, or were you training for anything in particular?
So luckily for me, after January, my A race every year is the Carlsbad Marathon, and I only do the half now, but it only is because I can't race in Tucson. I'm timing. So I have to find a race somewhere during some downtime. And I usually only have a few weeks window, because even in January, I have 2 or 3 races that I time. It just so happens nobody here in Tucson is putting on a race that weekend every year in Carlsbad. So I go out there and I time that. So I'm not training for anything. I made it through that race and I was very pleased with that. But I bike 3 days a week and I run 3 days a week. And I lift a couple of days a week. I'm always doing something. My husband is driving crazy with the whole shelter in place. I cannot sit still. So I keep getting all these little honey-do lists and things that I want to do. And I like to be self-sufficient. Like I really wish I knew how to use, a saw, like an electrical saw, or how to use equipment, because I would build things myself. But there's just only, I'm 54 years old. There's only so much I can do physically. Yeah. But no, I'm not a sit still gal. And if I'm not exercising or scheming on the next event that I want to put on, I have to be doing something in the yard or with the dogs. And yeah, I'm pretty active. I always equated myself to the lead singer of the Beach Boys. I don't know if anybody's seen that movie, but his brain never stopped. It always heard music, no matter where he was, and sounds and tones. And I feel like I'm that person with racing. Everywhere I go, I'm evaluating it. Could I put on a race here? What would it look like? Who could I market this to? What would we call it? And yeah, it never stops. Yeah. I want to be the Steve Jobs of race ideas.
I know you've come up with some really interesting race concepts in the past. Touch upon maybe your most interesting or unique race concept that you've done or directed.
Well, right now we're putting on the SIP Beer Mile. challenge. And that SIP stands for shelter in place. And I literally have people from 21 states so far that are doing this challenge. And the idea is, because you can't go out and race, to utilize something at home, whether it's your driveway, around your yard, or maybe if you can around your block, but you drink a beer, run a mile, and then drink a beer. And you take pictures and photos and share it on social media. And it is just taken off like wildfire. And I think it's because of the medal. It's a little like bottle opener that looks like a little COVID guy holding a beer, toasting people. And it's the first time I have put on a race that's not a triathlon where I'm getting people from out of state. I mean, the Oro Valley Tri Festival brings people from Canada, New Mexico, California, Nevada, and things like that. But this is literally, I've got people out of Florida and New England area, and and they're all sharing their stories. And it's become a unique community. I've just never seen anything like it. I mean, people that don't even know each other are talking and communicating and sharing their stories. And it's brought some joy to me in a very dark situation.
Yeah, that's great. What a great idea. How can people learn more about it?
You can go to my website, which is TRIOYL.com. It's up on there, or you can go on Run Sign Up and just search for SIP Beer Mile, and it will pop up. The challenge runs until July 31st. People have until then to run their mile, and you can submit your time or not. It's up to you if you want to be on the results. But we do ask that you share your story on Instagram or on Facebook. There is an event page for that, and people can join and share their stories. So I have one guy who's done it 10 times. Somebody told me he needs his own special award. He's like every week trying to better his time, and he keeps getting worse, I think. But he's having fun. He's having fun.
I might have to give that one a shot. That sounds kind of fun.
Yes. And if you have children, we have the Milk Mile.
Okay.
So we also have medals. We have medals that are for the beer mile, and we have medals for Milk Mile. So I have one family, mom and dad did the beer miles, and the kids, 3 kids, did the chocolate Milk Mile.
Well, let me know when you do the bourbon mile, because I'll like that one too.
Hey, I had one lady, she's like, I don't drink beer. Can I do it with wine? I'm like, if you can drink wine and run, go for it.
There you go. That's awesome. Well, Billy, thanks for jumping on and tell us a little bit about your business and what you've done and how you support the local endurance community here in Arizona. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Troy. It's always a pleasure to see you. I look forward to working with you some more in the future.
Absolutely. Well, thanks everybody for hopping on. And if you have any questions, be sure to check out Julie's website and buy that 6-pack of beer so you can do the beer mile event. Until next time, though, train safe and train smart.